more important for any deck other than red-green aggro. That deck on the play versus on the draw really can affect how strong its draws are.
Yeah, it's basically night and day. All right, so Krizan, I think both players, they look like they've kept 7 cards. We're going to start with the Godless Shrine. Freddy's going to start with the Mountain. Does he have a 1-drop? He does, in the form of Strongkirk Noble.
Now, Strongkirk Noble, probably the preferred 1-drop for Iafrate in this matchup. The can't be blocked by humans clause is actually really relevant against the Aristocrats, as both Cartel Aristocrat and Doomed Traveler are actually humans. The few cards that are not humans, Blood Artist that can't block, and then Boros Reckoner, which is probably the most important defensive card.
Yeah. So Krizan is just going to play a Sacred Foundry and pass the turn back, representing Tragic Slip right now. So we're going to see a Mountain here from Iafrate, and we'll see how he wants to follow up his turn. He's going to attack for 1. Is there a Tragic Slip coming? There is.
Yeah, there's a full 4 Tragic Slips in the main deck for Zach Krizan.
So the follow-up is going to be a Strongkirk Noble and a Rakdos Cackler. It's going to be unleashed. So not a bad start, honestly. You know, he's had 3 1-drops by turn 2. He's got 2 more creatures on the board. The big question here is, does Krizan have, the Mighty Boros Reckoner?
And I believe he does have, he has the Minotaur Wizard there. And, you know, it's really, this is one of those draws where you look at it and think, boy, if Drew was on the play here, he'd be swinging in for 3 right now.
Yeah.
But as it is, Krizan's still at 20.
So here is a Stomping Ground, and he's, all right, he's just like, I have to Searing Spear this, I have to let it basically 2 for 1 me. And he's going to take out the Rakdos Cackler, which Iafrate kind of reached for himself and said, I think you want to kill this one, right? So my Strongkirk Noble can come across and be a 2/2 against your deck that does have some humans in it. Is that the one that you killed?
Well, I don't know. I do see a Cartel Aristocrat in Zach Krizan's hand, but he's been seasoned enough this tournament that I have to think he's got a plan for how he's going to deal with Stromkirk Noble then.
It felt like a little bit of inducing there, where he's reaching for the Rakdos Cackler.
It definitely could be, and a savvy aggro player will often make plays like that.
So here's a Dragon Skull Stone, here's 4 mana. This is a Blood Artist and a Cartel Aristocrat, and passing the turn back. So Krizan trying to get a little stabilization here. You know, he does have Blood Artist to kind of swing the life totals, but we have a Hell Rider here from Iafrate on turn 4, so his draw is absolutely excellent. Here come 3 creatures. Here's 3 Hell Rider triggers, going to knock Krizan down to 16.
Right, so now it becomes a little bit of a balance here. You know, can Krizan actually take this damage, or does he have to trade right away? If he has a card like Lingering Souls in his hand, he may want to take the damage so he can protect Cartel Aristocrat. It turns out he's not going to do that. He's just going to trade the Cartel Aristocrat with the Cackler.
Yeah. So Cackler and Cartel are going to trade. You're going to see 2 Blood Artist triggers, basically going to negate the damage that Strongkirk Noble deals. So just going to see 3 come across here and pass the turn back. It's pretty paramount that he has something like a Blasphemous Act here, but even now, Blasphemous Act we're not in a range to be able to cast it. 8-3 is 5 + 1 for the red is 6, and it looks like to me that Krizan might be flooding out.
I think he has 2 more lands. The problem is that he can't deal with the Hell Rider, and he's got it. There's so many things he has to be worried about right now. Flinthoof Boar, obviously one of them. And he has second Hell Rider would be absolutely terrifying on this board.
It'd be a complete nightmare. So we see Flinthoof Boar, we see Iafrate giving it haste, 3 Hell Rider triggers yet again, going to move Krizan down to 10, and now blocking's getting pretty difficult, because now Blood Artist is just probably going to have to just fall underneath the bus.
I mean, you really don't want to go to 1 against a deck with Hell Rider. It means you have to have a point-and-click kill spell for Hell Rider. And at this point, he actually doesn't have one in the main deck that can do that. Tragic Slip, unless the creature's dying, doesn't actually kill Hell Rider.
So Krizan's going to block, he's going to gain life, he's going to draw a card to Falkenrath Aristocrat, and as good as that Mythic Rare is, it's not good enough right now, and Zach Krizan is going to concede this particular game. So we're going to see Iafrate, he is going to be up 1. As we're going to cut back to the booth here, because it is trivia time. Matthias, I will let you explain the rules, and I have a question for our friends at home. So the rules of trivia, for those of you who played who've watched us before, or maybe watching us during the top 8, is that between game 1 of the top 8, top 4, and finals, we give you a trivia question, and if you can answer correctly on Twitter, you'll get rewarded with progressively more amounts of Star City Games Premium. Because we're in the top 4 here, the prize is 6 months of Star City Premium. But to win, you have to have the hashtag SCG Premium on your tweets. And so what basically we're going to do, I'm going to ask you a question. We will draw from one of the people who do get it correct. So as I always like to say, it's about accuracy, not speed. It's not a race.
You have until the end of the semifinals. The correct answer.
You don't win for being able to Google faster than everybody else. All right. And the question is, for 6 months of premium, again, your hashtag with SCG Premium with your answer. Within Drew Iafrate's deck, he has a singleton creature, a one-of creature in his deck. Most of his deck is 4-ofs and 3-ofs. Within his main deck, he has a singleton in his deck. And if you're able to name that, I'll give you a little hint, 3-mana singleton that he does have in his deck, tweet your answer. Yeah, with the hashtag of SCG Premium.
It's a little bit of a throwback card in his deck. One that I think we saw it a little bit before Gatecrash came out. This card had a lot of play. After that, kind of fell off a bit.
I think for a pretty good reason. They printed a better 3-drop.
All right.
Pretty good 3-drop too. But if you're able to name that singleton 3-drop, hashtag your answer, hashtag SCG Premium on Twitter. Again, we will draw from one person who does get the answer correct, and we will do that after this round is over. But we are going to analyze the sideboards here, as both players are probably about done finishing sideboarding. We've got Krizan with the Aristocrats. He's going to be on the play, so what can he do to turn it around?
Well, I mean, most decks get better against red-green aggro after sideboard, and
Pretty
I would
hard
say,
not to.
yeah, I would say the Aristocrats is not much of an exception. Though to be fair, he does not have too much sideboard for the matchup. He has an Electrickery, he has a Dreadbore, he has a fourth Blasphemous Act. I think
that's a mouthful.
Yeah, I think what he wants to do is maximize on removal. As we saw there, Drew Iafrate will play, his goal at least is to play 2 creatures a turn from the first 2-3 turns of the game, and then if he can, as long as they're good enough, he's going to try to take away Zach's ability to trade 1-for-1 with them. So Zach wants, as we saw there, Blood Artist didn't actually get to trade for a creature, and that's one of the dangers that Zach's going to run into. Yeah. So he wants cards like Blasphemous Act, like Electrickery, that guarantee trades as much as possible.
And the scary thing there, if you're Krizan, is like, I think if you're Krizan, you probably feel this is a pretty good matchup for you. It's not like, an auto win or anything, but I think things are in his favor. And for him to lose the game that he's on the play is a little bit, it's a little bit disheartening. It's not the end-all be-all, but it's a little bit disheartening.
It reminds me of playing tennis. It's like when you lose while serving, you think, gosh, to win this match, I'm going to have to win while the other guy's serving. And it's in the same situation for Krizan. He's going to have to win on the draw, and that's something he's got to be a little unhappy about.
Yeah. I would agree. But I think, as you said, things are going to get a lot better for Krizan. Whereas Iafrate, you take a look at his sideboard of 3 Museum Mortars, 3 Volcanic Strengths, 2 Electrickeries, 4 Skullcracks, and 3 copies of Mark of Mutiny. I think we're going to see Volcanic Strength come in here, as Krizan's deck does have some removal in the form of Tragic Slip, but he doesn't have like a ton of removal, and he does have, Blood Crypt and Sacred Foundry for him to run over. So I wouldn't be too surprised to see those come in, and I wouldn't be surprised to see some number of Mark of Mutinies come in.
So here's some update on the other side of the bracket. We're moving away from what might be a red-green aggro finals. Brandon Hull, the other red-green aggro deck, was taken down by Ken Yeo in the first match.
I mean, that removal-heavy blue-white-red deck, truthfully, I can't say that I'm terribly surprised. The thing that does surprise me a little bit is that if Hull was going to win this match, I feel like he's going to have to win the games that he was on the play, and he was on the play game 1 as well. So these, it's difficult, I think, to steal 2 games against blue-white-red when you're going to be on the draw for like the most important one, which is game 3.
And what a tournament right now for Ken Yeo. We saw him in round 9 playing a mirror match for the win and in, then in round 10 playing another win and in, squeaking in with the 8th seed, getting game 3 against the top seed of the tournament. I think all 3 of those matches going to 3 games, now up a game, 1 game away from the finals of the entire tournament.
Hey, we talked about at length yesterday about how the Hallowed Fountain decks have basically fallen out of favor in the standard format, and at some point they were going to come back.
You must have been talking too loud, because now here's everyone knocking on the door to the finals.
Yeah, I mean, they were bound to come back. The cards in those decks are too powerful, and it looks like Ken Yeo has found at least a combination that he's happy with thus far, and he's certainly winning throughout this tournament. To see the subtraction of a card like Restoration Angel, a card like Augur of Bolas, it's kind of radical, but that might be the change that those decks need, because there needs to be some sort of evolution, and it probably needs to be a large one.
Well, I mean, I'm personally really excited to see 0 Augur of Bolas finally in these control decks.
Sure.
That's a card which I know in the past you've had to play because you need that roadblock, but I mean, every time I cast it, it's like, I look at the card, I cast it, and I'm crossing my fingers every time I cast it.
Well, what often happens on the SCG live stream here when I'm doing coverage, that every time Augur of Bolas is cast, it actually just puts the top 3 cards on the bottom of your deck, in any order that you choose. Right. Lucky you.
Right, I mean, so, and the numbers work out, that it finds a card about somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of the time, but, that's like an elvish visionary that sometimes doesn't even draw a card. And I'm if you give me a reason not to play it, I will take that reason.
I think you may have just been given one. And it's funny because Ken's deck has so many spells in it, yet he's without Augur of Bolas. I mean, it's clearly working.
Well, I mean, yeah. So we are almost at the start of our game here. What do we think about what kind of opener is Krizan, I guess, looking for here to make sure that he can stop? You know, he needs to stop what happened last game. He actually dealt with the early aggro, but then he lost, the late game Hell Rider.
I mean, I think it's I think it's Boros Reckoner centric. Yes, yes, Iafrate did have the spear to take care of it last game for his turn 3 Reckoner, but I still think that it's based around Boros Reckoner, and then hopefully the rest of the cards do come together. But Reckoner is so good against these red green aggro decks.
And every time your opponent spears a Reckoner, you have to be doing a little bit of a fist pump in your head.
Yeah, I mean that's a win, for you. It's a small victory, as we're going to see a strong Kirk Noble here from Iafrate to start off game number 2.
And the Electrickery out of the sideboard is in Zach Krizan's hand. And, I think we're going to see it. He's probably not going to wait to try to 2-for-1 with it. We're probably just going to see it happen here. He'll hold on to it in case Iafrate reaches for a Volcanic Strength.
Yeah. So in comes the Noble, and I think that Electrickery right now is just like a fine trade. It kind of stinks because he'd like to get like a Firefish Striker with it as well, which I think Iafrate does have in his hand, but that's just not going to happen. And there's Burning Tree Emissary into Firefish Striker, I think. Yeah. So this is another really great start for Iafrate. Yeah. And you see Krizan taking a look at the Firefish Striker will bring it up, a huge player in the Block Constructed Pro Tour.
Right. Iafrate choosing Firefish Striker over the typical Lightning Mauler in this spot. And I think as we saw with interestingly enough, if it were a Lightning Maul in that spot, you would have seen Zach Krizan score a 2-for-1 off that Electrickery,
yep.
which is actually pretty hard to do because the Striker and the Noble are the only things that get Electrickery'd, and it's pretty rare that Iafrate will attack and play them in such a manner that Zach would ever get a 2-for-1.
Sure. It would have to be a bit of a blunder for that to happen. So
right.
Here is a Godless Shrine. Here is the Minotaur Wizard that is Boros Reckoner. So it has shown up again.
Right, and Firefish Striker actually gives Iafrate a reasonable way to deal with Boros Reckoner. As we see, he has the Searing Spear, but he may not even do it. If he has a third creature, he may just try to swing past the 3/3.
And he has his own Boros Reckoner in his hand too. So he plays a Temple Garden untapped. Again, Temple Garden, a card that you're not really used to seeing in a mono red deck, but it is a way for people to cast Boros Reckoner and also have access to green mana. So that's why you see that here. It lets you cast Reckoner and also lets you Blood Rush Gore Clan Rampager.
Yeah, we saw Josh Utter-Layton doing the exact same thing in the top 4 of the Pro Tour last weekend, basically playing a Boros deck with a lot of mountains and some Temple Gardens.
It's just really good deck building. I really like it. So Iafrate plays his Boros Reckoner. He passes the turn back. So Krizan's Boros Reckoner is theoretically standing tall right now, but that Firefish Striker is looking to make it pretty feeble.
Yeah, we do see in Krizan's hand a second Boros Reckoner, which, I mean, a removal spell into a pair of Reckoners, is probably exactly what Krizan's looking for. If Iafrate's able to swing past it, I mean, that certainly does happen, but at that point you have to think that you're doing most of what you can do.
So this is a Godless Shrine into play tapped. It looks like we got a follow-up Reckoner here, and it looks like he has a Tragic Slip in his hand, I think.
Right, by putting that into play tapped, he's basically conceding 3 damage from Iafrate's own Boros Reckoner this turn. Well, I suppose not entirely, but because he can't first strike back.
So it looks like we have a Searing Spear. Yeah, so you see Iafrate kind of tapping and untapping his mana. There's a Searing Spear, there's a Pillar of Flame, a Rakdos Cackler, and a Hell Rider over there. Iafrate's got a lot of options, but he's going to start his turn with attacking for 3, trigger the Battalion on Firefish Striker, make it so that one of Krizan's Boros Reckoners can't block, and now the onus is on Krizan to what does he want to do with this Boros Reckoner that can block.
Well, I mean, the first thing when you look at this board is you think, okay, well, I should be blocking Firefish Striker. Why don't I take? I'll take my free hit. I'll take my free creature.
He can also alternatively look towards, do I block a Boros Reckoner and get into this fight of creatures going back and forth and dealing a bunch of damage.
Right, but it wouldn't even be Iafrate's Boros Reckoner would just so it'd first strike and then they'd essentially trade.
Yeah. So now after he does block, here's a Searing Spear on the Reckoner. So how do we feel about this play?
Well, this is one of the situations where if you're committed to that play, you probably just want to spear before. Like it's good that he did not spear before attacking because that way he got his Battalion trigger. But probably there's this window where after you declare attackers and before your opponent has declared blockers, where you can cast spells. And I think the spear should have come out at that point.
Okay.
Because right now, if basically the Firefish Striker is not going to deal any damage.
Sure. So he is still just going to get the job done on. Okay, so he's going to target the Reckoner. The Reckoner is going to target that Reckoner. The Reckoner is going to target this Reckoner. Okay. So we've cleared a bunch of things up, and he's going to end up just getting in for 2 points of damage and post-combat playing a Rakdos Cackler. So he clears up the entire field, but Iafrate has 2 creatures to Krizan's 0.
Right, and as we know, Iafrate has the follow-up Hell Rider. He's got to be pretty happy that both the Boros Reckoners are off the board.
But I think the one thing that he doesn't have, Matthias, right now is the 4th land in his hand.
Exactly.
That's the key. I think he has 2 cards left in his hand. It's a Pillar of Flame and a Hell Rider. And here's a Doom Traveler, and that's going to be followed by a Lingering Soul. So a bunch of things to get in the way here. Pillar of Flame is the draw step here for Iafrate. So again, without the 4th land for a Hell Rider, but Pillar of Flame is going to take care of Doom Traveler. No Spirit token going to come because it is exiled.
Right, so Krizan, what he can do with the Lingering Souls is basically just, each half of it's a 2/2. He can use them just to continue to trade them with Iafrate's creatures, which is more or less what Krizan wants to do in the matchup, is just keep trading whenever possible.
We might actually see Iafrate just not even attack here, because I don't know if this is a trade that he actually wants to make. Like, he attacks with both of his guys, he gets in 2 points of damage, yes, but he loses a guy, so then he loses how good Hell Rider is then.
Right. I think he does make the trade, because if this double block happens, then the board is clear for him to Hell Rider next turn. So say Krizan only has Flashback Lingering Souls, then it's only 2 power, and Drew can swing a Hell Rider when he draws the land.
All right, so we're going to see the 2 damage come across. The Spirits will trade with the Burning Tree Emissary, and now Krizan's going to draw a card.
Big game in Krizan's hand. Like I said, so now that he's done trading, what's the game plan? I think we're about to see if he has the 5th land. He has an Obsidat Ghost Council of Orzhova in his hand. So, he's still waiting on that 5th land. He casts another Lingering Souls, but as soon as he hits it, this card is the end of the line for a red-green deck.
So we see a Lingering Souls. Drew draws his card. He draws a Mark of Mutiny and immediately passes the turn back. So Krizan is doing a nice job of stabilizing here. He's looking for his 5th land. Iafrate is looking for his 4th land. And whichever player is actually able to hit this land on time is able to cast one heck of a haymaker to try to get back into this game.
And I think Krizan has it in a Godless Shrine. And the interesting part, Obsidat, Mark of Mutiny proof, as if Krizan's wise about it, he'll never actually let it be around at sorcery speed for it to get stolen.
So let's see what Krizan wants to do this turn. Because, I mean, it's a simple turn to just do something like, all right, flashback both my Lingering Souls, maybe even attack for 2 in the air and just go, all right, your turn. But, all right, there's the 5th
I like
land.
this, yeah. I mean, get your finisher out there as soon as you can. I think Krizan knows it, and I like also that he's attacking with the Lingering Souls as well. Yep, we do see the attack. We see the follow-up Ghost Council, and actually, he's not blinking the Ghost Council. That's going to give Iafrate a chance to Mark of Mutiny it, but he looks like he's settled on he has Spear Pillar for it, right?
No, so what he has right now is he has Mark of Mutiny, Pillar, and Hell Rider in his hand.
Okay.
So Spear Pillar is not going to get it done, and Mark of Mutiny right now is, I mean, it's like pretty good on the Obsidat.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's enough.
I don't think it's enough either.
But you almost feel like you have to try it, right?
So here's an interesting question. Like, if you Mark of Mutiny and Obsidat, and then you blink it out, how does that work? Like can you actually do that? Is that like a thing that can happen? Yeah.
I think if we boot up the card, it says it returns to play under its owner's control. So I think you blink it out, and I think it would come into play under Zach Krizan's control.
Okay.
Again.
All right.
Yeah. It doesn't actually, it doesn't become your Obsidat at any point.
I wanted to live a dream scenario. You can't blame me.
The one trick which that works with is cards like Restoration Angel, which says it returns to play under its controller's control.
Okay.
Or that will actually let you permanently steal something.
All right.
Under its owner's control at the beginning of your next upkeep. So actually, if you did that, the Ghost Council could not attack him next turn, because it would be at the beginning of Drew Iafrate's next turn, the Obsidat are going to play under Krizan's control.
Sure. I just wanted to live a little dream. But I guess Threatened Effects would be so good against Obsidat that
it just took him forever.
Yeah, just took the Ghost forever, and he just switched teams due to a Mark of Mutiny. I think that would just be ridiculous.
Either way, there was no answer to Ghost Council there once it was in play. Krizan hit the way to stabilize the game, and kind of in short order won game 2.
I think that's kind of more how he expects the games to go. We did see like that big Reckoner trades, but Krizan did draw 2 Reckoners against the red-green deck. You saw Iafrate had to go through some work there to kind of get those off the table. Yes, I think Iafrate may have been able to pull ahead in that game if he did draw the 4th land on time for the Hell Rider, but he didn't. And then Lingering Souls started to gum things up, as Lingering Souls is apt to do.
Yeah,
and
it just buys so much time.
Yeah. And we haven't even seen Blastoise show up here for Krizan. So in the back of his mind, he's like, I boarded into 4 of these things. It turns the game around like crazy. How about I draw one of those when I'm on the draw for game 3 to catch back up?
And yeah, and I think the big difficulty for Krizan in the matchup is actually finding that way to win the game. You know, sometimes as we find in game 1, he can trade and trade and trade, and then run out of cards and lose.
Yep.
And you know, Obsidat, a pretty important card in the matchup because once you, like as we saw, once you can cast an Obsidat, that and lose clause really just leaves.
Yep.
He only has 2 Obsidat in his deck. He has 3 Sorin Lord of Innistrad, which does something pretty similar. So it's maybe, you know, it's not as hard of a game finisher as Obsidat, but it's pretty close. Consistent blockers, consistent lifelink tokens will usually buy him enough time to close out the game or to draw a card that will close out the game.
Know, both players are happy with their sideboard configurations because they just went back to shuffling and then just moved forward pretty quickly here. Again, both players are working with as close to perfect information as you can have, since they do have each other's deck list, just like you guys have access to at home. I think they have an idea of what both players, or each other, excuse me, are going to sideboard in and out, and they're just ready to rock and roll.
Well, and this is the game where, you know, Krizan's kind of paying a little bit of a price for losing game 1 in that he's going to have to beat the red-green aggro deck while on the draw.
Yeah.
And he's got to just hope that Iafrate, so far Iafrate has had a 1-drop into 2 creatures both games.
His draws have been quite good both games. There's no
yeah,
argument,
I think both players have had pretty strong draws actually.
Yeah, I'm actually with you on that one. I can't really make an argument otherwise. I think draws have been good. You know, Krizan did flood out game 1 a little bit, unfortunately for him, but I mean his game 2 draw was certainly good.
Yeah, double Reckoner into Obsidat. It's pretty close to exactly what he'd want. All right, and we do have an update from the other side of the bracket.
I can't say I'm terribly surprised.
No.
In all honesty.
So the other match already finished. We have Ken Yeo, his blue-white-red control deck, you know, into the finals with a victory over Brandon Hull in red-green aggro.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sphinx's Revelation may be back, and we thought that maybe Brandon would be able to make a match of it, win games 1 and games 3, since he would be on the play for those games due to higher seeding. But Ken Yeo said, I don't think so. I got a ton of removal, I got Supreme Verdicts, I got Sphinx's Revelation, get that red-green deck out of here, and that's what's happened. So Ken Yeo is going to play the winner of this match, either Drew Iafrate playing red-green aggro, or Zach Krizan playing the Aristocrats. And I think, honestly, Matthias, either way, he's probably pretty happy with the match.
Yeah, it's pretty good for Ken Yeo. When I was looking at the brackets, I remember I said I thought it was a great top 8 for Krizan. I said, you know, the only deck he'd have to be worried about is this blue-white-red deck. But, you know, that's the 8th seed. It's on the other side of the bracket. He'll probably dodge it. He's not going to be able to dodge it if he wants to win the tournament.
Yeah, it's not going to happen at all. So, both players laying out some new ones. All right, gentlemen, I'm interested to see what's going to happen. I mean, Iafrate's had some very nice starts so far in this matchup. And let's take a look at his hand. You see a mountain, you see a temple garden. There's a pillar of flame hiding out over there as well.
A Boros Reckoner.
The big question is, does he have one of those 1-drops? Does he have a Stormcroak Noble? Does he have a Rakdos Cackler? Maybe does he have a Burning Tree Emissary draw? You see a Flint of Boar.
Yeah, Spear, Pillar. So he looks like he doesn't have the 1-drop creatures, but he's going to keep his hand anyway, unlike Zach Krizan.
Yeah, Krizan's going to go down to 6, and I think that, you know, 1 mulligan here for Krizan's not the end of the world. Again, when you have a deck that does have, you know, Doom Traveler, Blood Artist, Lingering Souls, Boros Reckoner to actually buy time against the tools that a red-green aggro deck has access to, you know, you can really just turn around a game pretty easily. So 1 mulligan's not a big deal.
Right. Well, one of the things is that what red-green aggro tries to do is it tries to beat you before you can play your entire hand. So oftentimes when you lose, you have extra cards in your hand. Because of that, what that tells me is, you know, not every card in your opening hand is actually necessary to stabilize against this deck. As long as you have the right cards, you can be down 1 or even 2 cards and still have a pretty good shot at beating them.
And I'm definitely with you on that one. So let's see what Krizan can find. I mean, ideally in a perfect world, again, I think it all starts with Boros Reckoner being in the opener, and we've seen that in both of his games. He's had a turn 3 Boros Reckoner in both games. In the second game there, the previous one we just watched, he had a Boros Reckoner in turn 3 and turn 4. And if you're a red-green aggro deck, the one thing that you just don't want to play against is, all right, just please don't have Boros Reckoner. And I mean, you see a concession towards that where, I mean, that's the reason that you see Firefish Striker in these decks. It's because you just want to be able to get by Boros Reckoner.
Right, and that, you know, I think that's pretty interesting innovation that he's gone with that. It seems, to me, that's when I see a card like Firefist Striker, what that tells me is that he's very aware of Boros Reckoner.
Yeah.
You know, losing Lightning Mauler really takes away a lot of his nut draws. But it seems like he's instead wants, you know, some measure of resiliency against this 3/3 that's really hard for his deck to get through.
And it's kind of funny because Firefish Striker leads to like a different sort of neutral. It's not as like in your face as turn 2 Burning Tree Emissary and a Lightning Mauler gets you for 4, but Firefish Striker makes it so that typically the stabilization tactics of decks right now in the metagame, where I stabilize through creatures, I don't stabilize through spells. And that started happening once Blue or Red kind of moved away. But now that people are probably going to make the moves towards stabilizing back towards spells, if that move happens, you're going to want to go back towards Lightning Mauler just to get the points of damage in.
Right. I mean, Firefish Striker is great against decks whose game plan against you is to cast a Thragtusk, for example. You can almost certainly, the turn they cast a Thragtusk, swing for more than 5 if you're able to Firefish Striker that Thragtusk.
So Krizan's going to lay out 6 cards here. Let's see what he can find. There's at least an Obsidian over there, but you don't want that now. You want that later.
He has a Dreadbore, an Obsidian, and it looks like a Boros Reckoner. Sorry, no, maybe it's just a Sacred Foundry.
Yeah, there's a Sacred Foundry at the front.
Right, I think I was confusing that one with the Reckoner. But either way, it's got the finisher for Krizan. Can he live until he hits that? And will he hit it with enough mana? Those are both pretty big questions.
There are 2 Doom Travelers over there as well. And he is going to keep, and Iafrate's going to start off with just a Temple Garden. So if you're Krizan, you're breathing a sigh of relief here because
Definitely.
There is no strong Kirk Noble to start. And here is a Sacred Foundry and passes the turn.
So I'm always of the opinion, whenever I see a red-green player keep, a hand with no 1-drop, I'm expecting Emissary into something on turn 2.
As you should.
Drew doesn't disappoint. He does have 5 power now on the board.
So let's see what Krizan can come up with. Again, we do know that he has Doom Traveler in his hand. He also has a Cavern of Souls, and
he has a Dreadbore here, which I think if he has the black mana to cast it, we'll probably just see him Dreadbore the Flinch of 4.
Take care of the boar, sure.
Yeah, it's probably that probably gains him the most life of the options he has.
Sure.
That said, I'm not sure he has a black mana.
His draw step for the turn looked to be a Lingering Souls, and we know he has a Cavern of Souls in his hand. And I think what's going on right now in his head is like,
what do I set it on?
Yeah, for Cavern of Souls, I have to ideally I have to name like Minotaur or Wizard for Boros Reckoner, but he names Human here to be able to put the 2 Doom Travelers into play to be able to start some blocking, and this is a beating.
2 Pillar of Flames. Well, what this does is right now, and that's what I was saying, how when you lose toward your you lose with a lot of cards in your hand. Drew is using the Pillar of Flames to, just buy time. Those aren't, it's really strong. It's just a 1-for-1 trade, but unless Zach draws the cards he really needs here, these other cards in his hand just aren't going to matter. The game will be over before he has a chance to play them.
And the draw step for the turn for Krizan was a Tragic Slip, so he passes the turn back. He does not have the 3rd land, so Iafrate's going to be able to come across here for 5 more points of damage with the Flinthoof Boar and the Burning Tree Emissary. Going to put Krizan down to 10.
And with Krizan's on the ropes right now, there's a Searing Spear in Drew Iafrate's hand, as well as this Boros Reckoner. So it's 8 power. That's lethal the next turn.
And the one thing that Krizan isn't even close to is Blasphemous Act, and Boros Reckoner actually cuts that as even being an out in this situation. And ironically enough, Krizan draws his own Boros Reckoner for the turn.
That should be just about it.
Yeah, doesn't have the lands to cast it, and his Cavern of Souls is set on Human.
Yeah, he drew Wear Tear for the turn. I'm not sure what artifact or enchantment he's going after right now.
I think the one hedge that there's Volcanic Strength in his sideboard, so you kind of want to hedge against that, but I think I'm more in the school of thought of just like hoping my opponent doesn't draw it, or
hope I have the kill spell.
Yeah.
All right, and we see there Zach now does not hit the 3rd land, and Iafrate wins the game on, I believe, turn 5.
Yeah. So Drew Iafrate is going to be moving on to the finals here. Red-green aggro, we're going to have at least one of them in the finals. Zach Krizan takes a pretty tough defeat in what is probably at least a decent or semi-favorable matchup for him, but a good run for him nonetheless with the Aristocrats Act 2.
His first loss of the tournament coming in the top 4. He's got to be pretty happy about how the weekend went in general.
Yeah,